Hey everybody! In case you missed the meeting, I went ahead and recording this, but this is a small presentation that I put together just to offer up some future suggestions that we might want to talk about and consider moving forward with the Aviation Advisory Council. So it's I think it's something that we need to put on the agenda and talk about moving forward, especially once we get the legislation in place. So let's go ahead and get started here. And let's see. One of the things that I was thinking about was, we have a lot of the numbers. I know that DRBA does, Steve. Looking at some of the carriers we had in the past, I know there were certain routes and certain times of the year that these folks did fairly well. So it might be worth exploring, not just those carriers, which was Frontier and Shuttle America, but maybe some of the other regionals that might have an interest in picking up routes that proved to be somewhat successful. And one of the things I ran across that I thought was pretty interesting was a small outfit up north of us there called Cape Air. I guess around Cape Cod and all those places. And they're running quite a number of aircraft to just different destinations. Boy, I can't talk. And usually about an hour and a half in length. But here's a short video to check it out.
So what's your commute like? Well, we're going to introduce you to a regional airline that has transformed commuting for many on the East Coast. The business plan is all built around that short-haul flight. Meet Dan Wolf. His passion for flying is undeniable, and he hopes infectious.
I started as a pilot and a mechanic, and I love flying even after 41 years. Every takeoff, every landing is really special.
He flies routes for Cape Air during the summer, and he also happens to be the airline's founder and CEO.
We fly up to 550 flights a day here at Cape Air in relatively small airplanes, and we do have a great safety record, and we're really proud of that.
The depth of the flights, really, if you look at the routing, I was kind of shocked at the numbers that it was way over 500.
Yeah, it's very deceiving because you get on one airplane in one place and you're thinking this is a small airline. But when you look at the big picture, we're actually moving a lot of people on a daily basis on a lot of flights.
What started 30 years ago as one plane, one route, and 8 employees is now a fleet of nearly 90 Cessna aircraft with an order for a new fleet of 100 planes on the way. But still, no route longer than an hour and a half. What's different about your flights, if there is anything different?
The security lines never have more than 8 other people because our airplanes only hold 9 people. And then when you get in the airplane, you're part of the experience of flying. One of the things that breaks my heart as a pilot, someone who has a real passion for aviation, is we sort of remove the flying part from it. You get in an airplane, the window shade comes down, the television comes on, and you end up going to your destination. There's an amazing thing we're doing when we take off and fly through the air. With Cape Air, you're part of that experience in a really positive way.
To see that experience for myself, Dan is giving us a ride from the company headquarters in Hyannis, Massachusetts, to Provincetown at the very tip of the Cape. A flight that will take less than 30 minutes.
What's our altitude right now then?
Right now we're at 1,500 feet.
1,000.
So you can see the city of Boston. The skyline is just...
Oh, I see it there. Yeah, yeah. There's nothing better than being in the air and watching the cars underneath. So, I mean, even that's a good view on some days.
In the small Cessna 402, you really can see everything.
The Provincetown where we're headed is right up here to the right.
Cape Air serves very small airports like Nantucket, regional airports like Westchester, and even major hubs like Boston's Logan Airport. What began as an airline primarily for tourists around the Cape area has grown to serve other communities both in and out of the United States, and business travelers too.
Cape Air has always been a mix in our 30 years of serving destinations that involve both tourism and involve business travelers and people who live there. And it's really a nice model because it's a great mix. It's cheaper in some cases to actually fly Cape Air to the destination than it is to drive your car and park. So that gives you an idea. Some of the tourist destinations that we serve, which are more upscale, our fares are higher. So A Cape Air ticket could be as low as $29. It could be as high as $299. It just depends on when you're traveling and where you're traveling.
Well, you made that look easy.
On the ground at Provincetown, we meet Kevin O'Shea, who lives here on the Cape, but runs businesses in the Boston and New York areas. He actually commutes using Cape Air, which offers a bulk commuter pass at a discounted rate. For Kevin, the flight and the ease of the small regional airport is a huge time saver.
There you go. We'll be screening your flight shortly. Thank you. Thank you.
Because that drive from Boston to the Cape and back can be brutal.
So in the winter, you've got a 2-hour drive to Boston on a good day without traffic. It feels like a hometown airline. You know, you arrive at the airport, everyone knows your name. It sort of brings some humanity back to air travel, which we don't seem to have these days.
Okay, there you have it. The one interesting thing I thought about that is they're currently flying 90 airplanes, and they have 100 on order, which means I would guess they need some more markets to fly in and out of. So now another thing that I was thinking about was our helipads. Of course, we only really have one helipad, but what's happening in the future is the vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. And it looks like that is going to be the growing market. And I believe that the helicopters will almost disappear. There probably will be some niches for it. But the vertical takeoff aircraft are going to be, they're estimated they're going to be flying 2022 and really start being in mass use by 2024. So it might be forward looking to look at the infrastructure to support that. And we may be able to be the ones that devote some effort into making this a hub for that to happen. So here's another little short video about the one company that has their prototypes about ready to fly, and then there's a second short video from Boeing doing the same thing. Now, as this video plays, you'll notice that a trip from New York to Boston can be accomplished in about 36 minutes. So we're looking at 300 mile an hour plus. And a trip from LA to San Francisco will be about 55 minutes. So again, 300 mile an hour plus. Okay, that particular plane you're looking at there is actually is in the prototype stages now, and they're going to develop it pretty quickly. And here's another one that Boeing's working on.
Boeing's working on a much smaller aircraft than usual, an air taxi. What they're calling the passenger air vehicle flew for the first time earlier this week. The VTOL air taxi had a successful takeoff, hover, and landing. And Boeing is working with Aurora Flight Sciences on the project. It's one of many similar designs in development to try and meet Uber's vision to have a fleet of air taxis flying in U.S. cities by the early 2020s.
We've all seen the incredible shots Hollywood can get.
There you go. So, I think that's an up-and-coming thing, and I think we really need to take a look at building infrastructure for those, or maybe looking at routes or reaching out to the folks that might be manufacturing those things. So, now, another thing I was thinking about was, pilot training, A&P training, avionics techs, and even aircraft upholstery, since we have a couple of good-sized companies that are doing refurbing on aircraft and stuff. Now, on the pilot training side, of course, we have Delaware State University has a really good pilot training program, as everybody knows. But back when I had the flight school Sky Safety, one of our plans was to have a marriage with Wilmington College, and not to get too far into the weeds on this one, but we actually had a projected growth rate of after about 5 to 8 years of close to $10 million. But the interesting part about that whole thing was we would have been knocking on the door of being the largest pilot training center in the United States, if not the world. The reason being is we had developed what we called the trainer program, and using just a standard out-of-the-box project management software. Our plan was to actually have pilots as they come on. Once they got to be private pilots, then they would move up to CFI and get their commercial, and then those folks would be training the new pilots coming in. The CFIs would be training the CFIs, so on and so forth. So what would have happened there is eventually a person graduating from Wilmington College in our flight training program would have had around 950 hours of flight time versus coming out of Embry-Riddle or American Flyers now. They maybe have 350 hours. So they would have been marketable, and we would have been marketing worldwide. And of course the A&P training and the avionics are all important to moving our industry forward. And I think could be some discussion in those areas on how to bolster that. Also, I was thinking about some public awareness programs and things we might be able to do to really improve public awareness of aviation in Delaware, what it does, get the economic impact information out there, but other things too, like, promotional stuff. And I was thinking possibly opening the tower for school classes and to the public by appointment. And what would be nice in the old tower is to maybe put in some computer screens to connect into Philly radar and have a scanner so kids could come up there and listen to the scanner, see the radar screen, and maybe we could have some charts and talk about airspace and that kind of thing. And of course, I've always been an advocate of the observation deck being open, but there's not as much with the hangars and everything during the way now. There's not as much as you can see, but still, occasionally, maybe it might be good to just open that up and have something going on, so people can come up and check it out like they used to. Maybe again looking at Airport Appreciation Day, guided tours on the inside the fence around to the different businesses and things like that. So that's pretty much my presentation, and it just gives us some things to talk about and consider and move on from there. So, all right, if any comments or anything, just let us know. We'll talk about it at the next meeting. Take care.